Allah says in the Quran, and when two groups of believers fight, make peace between them. But if one of them oppresses the other, then fight against the one that oppresses until it returns to the command of Allah. Surah Al-Hujurat 49-9. We look around the world today and we see turmoil, we see conflicts, and we hear names repeated again and again. Iran, America, Israel. We see headlines filled with accusations, alliances, sanctions, and threats. And the question that keeps echoing in the hearts of many is, what is the real reason behind their fight? What lies behind this endless cycle of tension? Is it only what we see on the surface, or is there something deeper that we need to understand? Sometimes in life we see things on the surface that seem so simple, so clear, so easy to understand, but when we dig deeper we begin to realize that the surface was just a cover, just a small part of a much greater story. In the world today we find ourselves constantly bombarded with images, news and headlines that try to tell us what is happening, who is right, who is wrong, who is the hero and who is the villain. But the truth is, not everything is what it seems. The visible battles that nations fight are often nothing more than shadows of much deeper wars. Wars that are fought in quiet boardrooms, through secret negotiations, in the strategies of economic control, and in the manipulation of public opinion. Many times the people are made to see one thing while something else is taking place behind closed doors. It is easy to look at two countries firing missiles and believe that the entire story is right there in front of us. But the missiles are often the result of conversations and decisions that were made long before the first shot was fired. The real reason behind many wars is not what the news shows us. It is not what is shouted in the streets. It is not always about the slogans and the flags that are waved. It is often about power, influence, and wealth. It is about who controls the resources, who controls the trade routes, who controls the hearts and minds of people, and who gets to decide the rules that everyone else must follow. When you look at some of the largest conflicts in modern history, you will notice a pattern. You will notice that many of them did not begin because of hatred between people, but because of the desire for power. When those in authority want more influence, they sometimes use war as a tool. They find a reason, they build a story, they light a fire, and then they stand back while the people on the ground fight. They provide the weapons, they provide the funding, and they make sure the world only sees what they want it to see. And the saddest part is that ordinary people are caught in the middle. Families lose their homes, children lose their schools, communities lose their peace, and all of it happens while the powerful watch from far away. Many times the wars that we see are nothing but the tip of the iceberg. They are the result of years of silent planning, years of political maneuvering, and years of shaping public opinion so that people will support the decisions made by their leaders. It is not always about defending a country or protecting freedom. Sometimes it is about controlling resources like oil, gas, minerals, or technology. Sometimes it is about making sure that certain governments remain weak while others grow stronger. Sometimes it is about keeping the balance of power in a way that benefits only a few. It is so important to realize that the world is not always fair. The information that reaches us is often carefully selected, carefully presented, and sometimes carefully twisted. When we watch the news, when we read the headlines, we must always ask ourselves, who benefits from this story? Who gains power from this narrative? Who makes money from this war? And who is paying the price? It is not enough to simply believe everything we are told. It is not enough to repeat what we hear without thinking. We must develop the habit of asking questions. We must train our hearts to seek the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. It is very easy to choose sides based on emotions, but emotions can be manipulated. They can be shaped by powerful voices that only want us to see what fits their agenda. There is another layer that we must understand, and that is the way religion is often used in these conflicts. Many times we are told that a war is being fought because of religious differences. We are told that people are fighting because they follow different beliefs. But when we look carefully, we find that religion is often used as a tool, as a cover, as a convenient excuse to rally people, to divide people, to create enemies. The truth is, many of these wars are not really about faith at all. They are about politics, they are about greed, they are about who will be in control and who will not. Religion is used to make people emotional, to make them feel like they are defending something sacred. But behind the scenes, the decision makers are focusing on power, on wealth, on influence. It is not about whose faith is right or wrong. It is about whose pockets will be filled, whose businesses will grow, whose armies will become stronger. This is why it is so important to avoid falling into the trap of hatred. It is so easy to hate when you believe you are under attack. It is so easy to hate when you believe that your people, your religion, your identity is being targeted. But hatred blinds us. Hatred makes us believe lies. Hatred prevents us from seeing the bigger picture. When we allow ourselves to be driven by hatred, we become tools in the hands of those who want us to fight their battles for them. We become soldiers in a war that was never really ours. We end up hurting people who are just as innocent as we are, people who are simply caught on the other side of a line that was drawn by someone else. The real challenge is to remain people of balance, people who see with clarity, people who can separate the truth from the noise. It is to recognize that the real battle is not always the one that is loud and visible. Sometimes the quiet battle for influence is far more dangerous because it is hidden. It happens when policies are made, when economic deals are signed, when international alliances are formed, and when entire populations are manipulated to think a certain way. This is why education is so powerful. When people are educated, when they learn to think critically, when they understand history, politics, and economics, they become harder to deceive. They become more resistant to propaganda. They become more capable of seeing through the lies. It is not a sign of intelligence to accept whatever we are told without questioning. It is not a sign of loyalty to blindly support decisions that cause harm to the innocent. The real sign of strength is to seek the truth with sincerity, to be fair even when it is difficult, and to stand up for justice even when the world tells you to sit down. The powerful will always try to hide their real motives. They will always try to shape the story in a way that makes them look good. But the one who seeks the truth will not be satisfied with half the story. The one who seeks the truth will keep asking, will keep searching, will keep digging until the layers of deception are peeled away. The sad reality is that when wars begin, the ones who suffer the most are the ones who never wanted the war in the first place. It is the ordinary families who lose their loved ones. It is the small children who are forced to flee their homes. It is the elderly who are left behind in cities that are turned to rubble. Meanwhile, the powerful continue to live in comfort, making decisions from far away, sending weapons, negotiating deals, and watching the numbers without feeling the pain on the ground. The more we understand this, the more we will realize that real strength is not in taking sides without knowledge. Real strength is in becoming a voice for the voiceless, in standing for peace when the world demands war, in refusing to be manipulated by those who seek only their own gain. It is important to know that the lines between nations, between religions, between cultures are often used to divide us, but they are not as deep as we think. Human beings share much more than what divides them. The desire for safety, for family, for a good life, for peace, these are universal. But the powerful benefit when we forget this. They benefit when we see each other as enemies. They benefit when we turn against each other. They benefit when we destroy each other while they watch from their safe seats. There are those who will argue that conflicts are unavoidable, that wars are necessary, that some people must be crushed for others to rise. But this is the language of those who profit from suffering. This is the thinking of those who cannot build without destroying. This is the mindset of those who have forgotten the value of life. The one who understands the weight of injustice will never celebrate the pain of another, even if that person belongs to another nation, another faith, or another background. Compassion is not limited to people who look like us or who pray like us. Compassion is for every human being. It is essential to look back at history and see how many wars began with lies. How many conflicts started because someone told the people that they were under threat when in reality they were not. How many battles were fought because people believed false stories? How many innocent lives were lost because the powerful wanted to redraw borders, to control trade, to dominate resources? It is painful to realize that even today the same patterns are repeated. The stories may change, the faces may change, the technology may advance, but the motives remain the same. This is why the one who understands will never rush to judgment. The one who understands will never be quick to hate. The one who understands will always ask, always seek, always try to find the full truth. And when we find the truth, we must speak it, even if it is against popular opinion, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it challenges what we have always believed. The world needs people who think deeply, who feel deeply, and who act with wisdom. The world needs people who are not easily swayed by emotions, by propaganda, by half-truths. The world needs people who see beyond the visible battles, who understand the hidden hands, who recognize the deeper games being played. And the world needs people who choose peace, who choose justice, who choose compassion, not because it is easy, but because it is right. When nations fight and leaders make loud decisions, it is rarely those in palaces or those sitting comfortably in high offices who pay the price. It is not the ones who decide when the war starts or when the war ends who lose their homes or their children. It is the ordinary people, the simple families, the workers, the farmers, the students, the teachers, the shopkeepers, the elderly, the women, and the children who suffer the most. When decisions are made in faraway places, when hands are shaken over agreements that will lead to destruction, the poor are not invited to those meetings. The weak have no seat at those tables. And yet they are the first to bleed when the first missiles are launched. How many times in history has this happened, that the ones who suffer are the ones who never chose to be part of the fight? They never wanted to take sides. They never wanted to see their homes destroyed. They never wanted to bury their loved ones. But they had no choice because they were caught in the middle of battles that were never theirs to begin with. It is painful when we see images of destroyed cities, when we see the tears of mothers holding the lifeless bodies of their children, when we see fathers digging through rubble with their bare hands hoping to find some sign of life, when we see children walking through the ruins of what used to be their homes, carrying bags that hold all that is left of their lives. Who made these decisions? Who sent these bombs? Who supplied these weapons? And who gains from all this destruction? Surely it is not the poor family that has just been forced to flee their home with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Surely it is not the old man sitting on the side of the road with tears in his eyes because his entire neighborhood has been reduced to dust. Surely it is not the little girl who now wakes up screaming in the middle of the night because the sound of explosions will never leave her memory. The reality is that those who ignite wars often do so to protect their own power. They speak about freedom, they speak about justice, they speak about security, but their real goal is to maintain their influence, to secure their wealth, to control resources, and to remain in positions of strength. They rarely ever fight their own battles, they send others to do the fighting for them. They build stories that make it seem as though they are the defenders of truth, but behind those stories are hidden deals, hidden profits, and hidden motives. They may tell the world that they are fighting for noble reasons, but when you dig deeper, you will see that what they truly fight for is not always what they claim. It is often about maintaining access to oil, to gas, to minerals, to trade routes, to strategic territories. It is about keeping some nations weak and others strong. It is about making sure that the ones who control the world economy remain in control. The tragedy is that the poor have no say. The poor cannot argue. The poor cannot attend the international conferences where borders are drawn and where treaties are signed. The poor cannot decide which side they are on, because when bombs begin to fall, survival is their only concern. They are not thinking about politics, they are thinking about where they will find their next meal. They are thinking about how to keep their children safe. They are thinking about how to find shelter. They are thinking about whether they will ever see their homes again. This is the pain that is so often forgotten when the world focuses only on power and ignores the cries of the ordinary people. And it is not only the bombs and bullets that harm the poor. Sanctions, blockades, economic restrictions, these are weapons too, but they are silent weapons. When powerful nations decide to punish a country, they often punish its people instead. Food becomes scarce, medicine becomes hard to find, hospitals run out of supplies, prices rise, jobs disappear, and the ones who suffer are the ones who are already struggling. The leaders usually remain protected, but the ordinary people are the ones who stand in long lines for bread, who see their children dying because there is no medicine available, who carry the weight of a fight they did not choose. This is why we must always remember that when nations fight, the poor always bleed. The wealthy may speak loudly about winning wars, but the ones who lose the most are often the ones whose names the world will never know. When you look at the numbers that are shown in the news, remember that each number is a life, each number is a family, each number is a story that has been shattered. It is easy to speak about war in numbers, but those numbers hide the faces, the tears, the memories, and the heartbreak of real people. It is even more painful when we realize how lies are used to shape the world. The most powerful weapon is not always the one that explodes. It is sometimes the lie that spreads. When a false story is told and retold, when it is repeated across newspapers, on television, on social media, when it is carefully designed to make people believe a particular version of events, that lie becomes accepted as truth. And once people believe that lie, they begin to support things they would never have supported if they knew the real story. They begin to accept injustice. They begin to cheer for violence. They begin to hate people they have never met simply because they were told to hate. How many times have we seen this happen? A story is spread about a country, about a leader, about a group of people, and the world is made to believe that they are evil, that they are dangerous, that they are a threat to peace. And then when bombs fall on them, the world says nothing because the lie was so powerful that people no longer see the humanity of those who are suffering. This is why it is so important to always ask, who benefits from this story? Who gains power when this lie is believed? Who profits from this war? Who is making money while the poor are being crushed? There are those who know how to sell lies in beautiful packaging. They use the language of freedom, of security, of progress, but what they truly seek is dominance. They control the flow of information. They control what people see and what people hear. They carefully select which stories are told and which stories are buried. They show you what they want you to see and hide what they want you to ignore. And if you do not question, if you do not think, if you do not investigate, you will easily become someone who repeats what you have been told without realizing that you are spreading lies. The responsibility is on each of us to be people who think, who verify, who search for the truth, who are not quick to hate, who are not quick to judge, who are not easily manipulated. It is a sign of wisdom to pause and ask, is what I am being told the whole story? It is a sign of intelligence to consider that perhaps the information I have is incomplete, that perhaps there are layers I do not see, that perhaps the reality is more complicated than the headlines suggest. The problem is that lies are repeated so often that they begin to sound like truth. And once people are convinced, they become willing to accept the suffering of others as something justified. They begin to believe that the innocent people on the other side deserve what is happening to them. This is the danger of allowing lies to spread unchecked. When falsehood is left unchallenged, it destroys the very fabric of compassion in society. The one who understands will never rejoice at the suffering of others. The one who understands will never support war just because it is popular to do so. The one who understands will always look for the truth, even when the truth is buried beneath layers of deception. The one who understands will always remember that behind every conflict are ordinary people whose lives have been turned upside down, people who wanted nothing more than to live in peace. It is necessary to develop the habit of questioning. Just because something is repeated does not make it true. Just because the loudest voices say something does not make it right. Just because a certain view is popular does not make it correct. The truth does not depend on how many people believe it. The truth remains the truth, whether it is accepted or rejected. And falsehood remains false, no matter how beautifully it is presented. It is important to understand that those who spread lies often have much to gain. Lies are not spread for free. There is always someone who benefits when the truth is hidden. There is always someone who gains power when falsehood is believed. Lies can change the direction of wars. Lies can destroy nations. Lies can separate families. Lies can turn neighbors into enemies. Lies can make people accept the unacceptable. The danger of the silent weapon of misinformation is that it attacks the mind. When people's minds are captured, when their thoughts are controlled, they begin to see the world through the lens that has been provided for them. They stop asking questions. They stop looking for alternative views. They stop considering that they might be wrong. They become trapped in a narrow understanding, convinced that they know the full story, when in reality they have been carefully fed only one side. This is why it is so important to keep learning, to keep reading, to keep searching, to keep listening to voices that are not usually given the platform. It is through this that we begin to see the cracks in the stories we have been told. It is through this that we begin to recognize the manipulation. It is through this that we develop the courage to stand for the truth, even when it is not the popular choice. It is also important to remember that when lies spread, they create division. They create hatred where there was once peace. They create enemies where there were once neighbors. They create fear where there was once trust. Lies have the power to poison entire generations. They have the power to make people turn against each other for no reason other than the false stories they have been taught. The powerful know this. They know that controlling what people believe is the fastest way to control their actions. They know that if they can control the story, they can control the outcome. This is why they invest so much in shaping narratives, in controlling the media, in deciding which stories deserve attention and which do not. But there is hope. There is hope when people begin to think for themselves. There is hope when people refuse to be divided. There is hope when people start to question the stories they have been told. There is hope when people start to see the humanity in those they were taught to hate. There is hope when people choose to seek the truth, even when it is difficult, even when it is unpopular. The journey towards truth is not always easy, but it is always necessary. It requires patience, it requires humility, it requires the willingness to admit that sometimes we have believed things that were not true. It requires the courage to change our views when we find better evidence. It requires the strength to stand firm when others try to silence us. There are battles that we can see and battles that we cannot see. Sometimes we are shown the smoke, but we are not shown the fire that started it. Sometimes we are told that this war is because of religion, because of race, because of old divisions. But if we look closer, if we dig beneath the surface, we will find that many times it is not really about faith. It is about oil, about money, about control, about power. It is not always the people on the ground who hate each other. It is the people at the top who create that hatred, who spread fear, who invent enemies to keep their own power secure. The saddest part is that many times we fall into their trap. We believe what we are told, we repeat what we hear, we support what we do not fully understand, and we begin to hate people we have never met. When there is oil beneath the ground, when there are resources to be claimed, when there are trade routes to be controlled, suddenly a reason to go to war is created. Suddenly a threat is found. Suddenly a justification is presented, and the world is made to believe that this war is necessary, that it is a fight for freedom, for security, for peace, but it is not always so. It is often about who will control the wealth that lies hidden, who will dominate the seas and the skies, who will make the rules and who will be forced to follow them. The danger is when people start to believe that these wars are about protecting religion, when they are made to think that their faith is under attack and that they must defend it by supporting those who started the war. Faith is a sacred matter. And when it is used as a weapon by those in power, it leads people into battle without questioning the real motives behind the conflict. It is easy to inflame the hearts of people when they believe they are fighting for their beliefs, but sometimes they are not fighting for faith at all. They are fighting to serve the interests of those who will take the wealth and leave the destruction behind. It is painful when we see how easy it is to convince people to fight each other, how simple it is to divide communities by feeding them fear, by planting seeds of suspicion, by telling them again and again that their neighbors are their enemies. This is why it is necessary to look at the deeper reasons behind wars. The headlines may say one thing, but the real reasons are often hidden in agreements that are not made public, in meetings that are not shown on television, in contracts that secure access to resources. Many times peace is not profitable for those who sell weapons, for those who control the trade, for those who benefit when others are weak. Peace does not bring them the same power that war brings. This is why some conflicts are never meant to end. Some wars are not solved because there are people who profit from the continuation of the violence. There are people whose businesses grow when bombs are falling. There are people who build their wealth when soldiers are fighting. There are people who become powerful when others are divided. When we see that, we begin to understand why some wars continue for years and years without a solution. The people on the ground may want peace, they may cry for peace, they may march for peace, but their voices are drowned by the sound of weapons being sold, by the sound of deals being signed. Sometimes the people who have the power to stop a war will not stop it because the war benefits them. It keeps their economy strong. It keeps their influence alive. It keeps their enemies weak. The longer the fight continues, the more they gain. The ones who suffer are the innocent. They are the ones whose schools are destroyed, whose hospitals are turned into rubble, whose markets are bombed, whose homes are burned, whose children are orphaned. The ones who started the war do not walk through the streets filled with rubble. They sit in clean offices, far away from the noise of the battle, making more decisions, signing more papers, building more strategies to continue what they have started. This is why it is so important to always ask, who profits from this war? Who gains wealth? Who gains power? Who benefits when people are divided? Who gains when peace is delayed? Who becomes stronger when others become weaker? These are the questions that we must ask ourselves whenever we see a conflict that seems to have no end. It is easy to believe what we are told, but the one who is wise does not accept stories without thinking. The one who is wise looks beyond the slogans, beyond the speeches, beyond the banners, and sees the deeper reasons that are not always mentioned. Sometimes we are told that a war is about protecting a nation from danger, but when we study it carefully, we see that the real goal is to control a valuable piece of land, to secure access to important resources, to dominate a region that is rich in oil, in gas, in minerals, in trade. The ones who start the war do not always say this openly. They hide behind beautiful words, but their actions reveal their true intentions. When the fighting starts, it is not their homes that are bombed, it is not their children who go hungry, it is not their streets that are filled with fear. The poor, the weak, the ordinary people are the ones who carry the burden. When peace is not profitable, there will always be those who work to keep the fire burning. When people come close to finding a solution, when there is a chance for the violence to end, suddenly something happens to reignite the fight. Suddenly there is another excuse to continue. Suddenly there is another reason to delay peace. This happens because there are those who are not interested in seeing the weapons put down. Their power depends on the continuation of the fight. Their influence is connected to the war. Their businesses grow when others are destroyed. This is a painful reality, but it is one that we must understand if we want to be people who stand for truth. Sometimes nations need to create enemies to keep their people united under fear. When a nation is divided inside, when its people are questioning their leaders, when they are asking for their rights, when they are becoming difficult to control, the leaders sometimes create an outside enemy to distract them. They make the people feel that they are under threat, and when people feel fear, they forget their other problems. They stop asking questions. They become focused on the outside danger. They rally behind their leaders. They accept things they would never have accepted in times of peace. They allow their freedoms to be taken in the name of security. They become willing to support wars that bring destruction, all because they were convinced that an outside enemy is coming to harm them. This is the politics of fear. It is a powerful tool. It shapes how people think. It controls their emotions. It turns their attention away from their real issues and makes them focus on manufactured dangers. It is so easy to use fear to keep people loyal, to keep people silent, to keep people obedient. And sometimes the enemy that is presented is not really an enemy at all. Sometimes it is just a group of people who have been painted as dangerous by those who wish to keep the fear alive. Fear is used to control societies. It is used to pass laws that would not be accepted in peaceful times. It is used to justify oppression. It is used to excuse violations of rights. When people are afraid, they accept things they would normally reject. This is why it is necessary to be people who think carefully, who question what we are told, who do not let fear control our hearts. Just because we are told that someone is a danger does not mean it is true. Just because we are told that a war is necessary does not mean it is just. Just because we are told that a nation is evil does not mean that its people are our enemies. We must always ask, is this fear real or is it being used to control me? Is this war necessary or is it being used to keep certain people in power? Is this enemy truly a threat or has this image been created to keep me afraid? And this is where every individual is tested. Will you be a voice for justice or just an echo of media? Will you repeat what you have been told without questioning it, or will you seek the truth even when it is hidden beneath layers of deception? Will you stand with those who suffer or with those who profit from their suffering? Will you ask the difficult questions or will you follow the crowd without thinking? It is easy to repeat what we hear. It is easy to follow what is popular. It is easy to cheer for what is widely accepted. But the people who truly make a difference are the people who think, who verify, who refuse to be manipulated. When we watch the news, when we read headlines, when we hear stories, we must pause and ask, is this the whole story? Am I being shown the complete picture? Am I being told the truth or only a part of it? Whose voice is missing from this story? Who has been silenced? Who has been painted as the enemy without a chance to explain? These are the questions that protect us from being swept away by propaganda. These are the questions that help us stand on the side of justice. In every conflict, there are those who are voiceless. There are those who are crushed beneath the weight of powerful nations. There are those whose stories are never told. There are those whose tears are never shown. The world often amplifies the voices of the powerful and silences the cries of the weak. The world often glorifies the victories of the strong and ignores the suffering of the poor. This is why it is a responsibility to search for the silenced stories, to listen to the unheard voices, to give attention to those who have been forgotten by the world. It is not enough to simply accept what is presented. It is not enough to only believe what we are told by those who benefit from the war. It is not enough to judge a situation based on one side of the story. Truth requires patience. It requires effort. It requires humility. It requires a sincere desire to find out what is really happening, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it challenges what we have always believed. The one who chooses to be a voice for justice will not be popular. The one who chooses to question the dominant narrative will not be praised by the powerful. The one who chooses to seek the truth will not always find easy answers, but the one who seeks the truth will sleep with a peaceful heart, knowing that they did not contribute to the spread of lies, knowing that they did not become a tool in the hands of those who profit from the suffering of others. It is not bravery to repeat what is popular. It is not intelligence to accept stories without questioning. Real courage is found in standing for the truth when it is difficult. Real wisdom is found in seeing beyond the surface. Real strength is found in resisting the pressure to hate, in choosing to be fair, in choosing to see the humanity in those who have been painted as enemies. When we are constantly bombarded with stories that make us believe that certain people are dangerous, that certain nations are evil, that certain communities must be feared, we must remember that it is very easy to create an enemy with words. It is very easy to manipulate hearts with carefully selected images. It is very easy to control public opinion by deciding what to show and what to hide. It is very easy to turn compassion into hatred when fear is spread consistently. But it is difficult to resist this manipulation. It is difficult to choose to think when everyone else is simply following. It is difficult to search for the truth when the truth is buried. It is difficult to stand against injustice when the voices around us are supporting it. It is difficult, but it is necessary. It is the responsibility of those who care about truth, about justice, about humanity. The question remains, will you be a voice for justice? Or will you just be an echo? Will you have the courage to stand for the voiceless? Or will you simply repeat the stories you have been told? Will you be someone who spreads compassion or someone who spreads the hatred that was planted by others? The answer to this question is found in the choices we make every day. When we hear about a conflict, do we take the time to understand it or do we accept the first explanation we hear? When we see suffering, do we feel compassion for the victims regardless of which side they are on, or do we decide who deserves our sympathy based on what we were taught to believe? The ability to think, to question, to verify, to seek truth, to stand for justice, to resist manipulation, to choose compassion over hatred. These are the qualities that protect us from becoming pawns in the games of the powerful. These are the qualities that allow us to break the cycle of division, of fear, of endless war. It is not enough to be silent when lies are spread. It is not enough to say that it does not concern us. It is not enough to ignore the suffering of others because we are not directly affected. Injustice anyway should concern everyone who cares about truth and fairness. The lives of innocent people should matter to us regardless of their nationality, their language, their race, or their religion. We must be people who care about the pain of others as if it were our own. We must be people who stand for justice not only when it is easy, not only when it is popular, but especially when it is difficult, especially when it is unpopular. The wars that are not meant to end will only continue if the lies that fuel them are allowed to spread without question. The wars that bring profit to the few at the expense of the many will only continue if the majority of people accept what they are told without thinking. The divisions that keep people fighting each other will only remain if we choose to echo what we hear instead of seeking the truth for ourselves. The choice is in our hands. Will we be people who blindly accept the stories fed to us by those who benefit from war, or will we be people who search, who question, who seek the voices that have been silenced, who stand for the truth even when it is uncomfortable? Will we be people who choose peace over profit, who choose unity over division, who choose to be a voice for justice rather than an echo of media? This is a responsibility we all carry, and it begins with the way we think, with the way we question, with the way we choose to see the world.